Have you ever noticed someone who just sees everything? They pick up on the tiny sigh you made, the way your smile didn't quite reach your eyes. They notice when the room shifts. These people are called the hyper-aware, and their psychology is fascinating. Most people walk through life half asleep to the world around them, but hyper-aware people, they're tuned into a completely different frequency, picking up signals that others simply miss. Welcome to this video about the psychology of people who are too aware. By the end, you'll understand why these people think the way they do, and maybe recognize a little of yourself in them. First, what does it even mean to be hyper-aware? It means your brain is constantly collecting data. Every facial twitch, every pause in conversation, every change in someone's tone, your mind is filing it all away. Think of your brain like a sponge. Most people's sponge absorbs the big stuff, loud events, obvious emotions. But hyper-aware people, their sponge soaks up everything, even the tiny drops. This often starts in childhood. Many hyper-aware individuals grew up in environments where they had to pay very close attention to moods, to tension in the room, to unspoken rules. It became a survival skill. Over time, this hypervigilance got hardwired. Their nervous system learned to stay on alert because in their early world, missing a signal could mean trouble. The brain never fully got the message that it was safe to relax. Now let's talk about the gift side of this. Hyper-aware people are often incredibly empathetic. They can feel what others feel, sometimes before the other person even knows it themselves. If you tell them you're fine, but something's off, they already know. They read your body language, your word choice, the slight hesitation before you answered. They're human lie detectors, but kind ones. They also make excellent friends, counselors, and leaders because they don't just hear your words, they hear the story behind the words. They respond to what you actually need, not just what you said. But with every gift comes a challenge. For hyper-aware people, one of the biggest struggles is something called overstimulation. Their brain never stops processing, and that's exhausting. Imagine walking into a party. While others enjoy the music and conversation, a hyper-aware person is simultaneously tracking 10 different social dynamics, noticing who seems upset, who's faking a laugh, and what the host's stressed expression might mean. By the end of the night, they're completely drained, not because they didn't enjoy themselves, but because their brain did 5 times the work of everyone else in the room. This is why hyper-aware people often need significant alone time. It's not that they don't like people, they do. They just need time to decompress, to quiet all the noise their brain collected during the day. Another big challenge is overthinking. Hyper-aware people don't just react to situations, they analyze them over and over. Why did she say it that way? Did I say something wrong? What did that look mean? Their brain is always running scenarios, best case, worst case, and every case in between. It can be a superpower for problem solving, but a nightmare when it's 2 a.m. and the brain won't shut off. Hyper-aware people are also deeply bothered by injustice. Because they notice everything, they also notice when something is unfair, and it sits with them. They can't simply look the other way. This makes them advocates, whistleblowers, and truth-tellers. But it also means they carry a heavy emotional weight because they feel the wrongness of things that others don't even notice. Let's talk about relationships. Hyper-aware people experience love deeply and intensely. They notice every little thing their partner does, a kind gesture, a distant look, a change in routine. Nothing slips by them. This can create deep, meaningful connections because their partners feel truly seen and understood. But it can also create anxiety. They may read too much into a simple "I'm tired" text or a 2-second delay in a reply. They crave authentic connection. Small talk feels hollow to them. They want real conversations about fears, dreams, the meaning of things. They'd rather have one deep friendship than 20 surface-level ones. Now, there's an important distinction to make. Being hyper-aware is different from being anxious, though the two often overlap. Awareness is about perception. Anxiety is the fear response that sometimes follows that perception. Hyper-aware people can learn to observe without always reacting. The challenge is training the brain to say, "I noticed that, and I don't need to do anything about it right now." That's a skill that takes real practice. One thing that surprises people about hyper-aware individuals is that they're often very quiet in groups. Not because they have nothing to say, but because they're observing so much that they're processing it all before speaking. By the time they do speak, their words tend to carry weight. They've thought about it carefully, seen multiple angles, and what comes out is usually worth listening to. Hyper-aware people are also deeply sensitive to their environment. Harsh lighting, loud noises, crowded spaces, strong smells, these things can genuinely affect their mood and mental state. This isn't weakness, it's a nervous system that's finely tuned. Think of it like a high-resolution camera. It captures more detail, but it also needs more careful handling than a basic point-and-shoot. Hyper-aware people often struggle with decision fatigue. Because they see so many angles and consequences, even simple choices, what to eat, which route to take, can feel overwhelming. They're not being indecisive for no reason. Their brain is running a full cost-benefit analysis on everything. They're thinking about how each choice might affect others, not just themselves. Let's talk about what happens inside their head when there's conflict. For hyper-aware people, conflict is especially draining because they pick up on every nuance, every word, every tone, every silence. They often feel the emotional aftermath of a difficult conversation long after it's over, replaying it in their mind, wondering if they could have handled it differently, worrying about the other person's feelings. This is why many hyper-aware people become conflict avoidant. The cost of conflict, all that sensory and emotional processing, simply feels too high. They'd rather keep the peace, even at their own expense. But here's the thing, suppressing their awareness doesn't make it go away, it just builds up inside. That's when it starts leaking out as anxiety, irritability, or emotional overwhelm. Healthy hyper-aware people learn to release this energy through journaling, creative expression, exercise, or simply talking to someone they trust. The awareness needs an outlet, not a lid. Hyper-aware people often have a rich inner world. They think deeply about meaning, purpose, and the nature of things. Small moments, a sunset, a kind gesture can move them profoundly. This depth of feeling is a beautiful thing, but it also means they can be deeply affected by sad news, difficult movies, or other people's pain. They absorb emotion like a sponge, the joy and the sorrow. They often need to be careful about what content they consume, violent news, graphic media, toxic environments, not because they're fragile, but because they genuinely feel it all and carry it with them. Hyper-aware people are often natural pattern finders in data, in people, in systems. They connect dots others miss. This makes them excellent at creative work, research, writing, and any field that rewards depth of thinking. They often surprise people with sudden insights, things that seem to come from nowhere. But they didn't come from nowhere. They came from weeks of quiet observation finally clicking into place. Another fascinating trait, hyper-aware people tend to be very self-aware too. They analyze their own behavior, thoughts, and emotions with the same intensity they apply to the world around them. This self-awareness is a superpower for growth, but it can also tip into self-criticism. Why did I say that? I should have done better. They hold themselves to very high standards. One of the most important things hyper-aware people need to learn is self-compassion. They give it so freely to others, reading everyone's pain and responding with care, but they forget to give it to themselves. If you're hyper-aware, here's something important. Your awareness is not a burden, it's a gift that needs the right container. With self-care, boundaries, and emotional literacy, it becomes one of the most powerful human traits. Let's look at a few practical tools that help hyper-aware people thrive. First, grounding techniques.
When the brain is overwhelmed with input, grounding brings it back to the present moment. Second, setting information limits. Hyper-aware people benefit enormously from limiting social media scrolling, news intake, and noisy environments, especially before sleep. It gives their brain permission to rest. Third, naming their observations. Instead of letting awareness swirl around uncontrolled, journaling or speaking their observations out loud helps hyper-aware people organize what they sense into something manageable. Fourth, choosing environments wisely. Hyper-aware people thrive in calm, predictable, meaningful spaces. They often prefer quieter workplaces, smaller gatherings, and relationships built on genuine trust. And fifth, learning to let go. Not every signal needs a response. Not every observation needs to be solved. Sometimes awareness is just a note from your brain, not an alarm. Hyper-aware people learn to say, "I see it, and I'm okay."